Innovation and digital initiatives for the intelligent connected enterprise. And I know those are heavy words. So David Kidder, like I said earlier, good friend of mine. He's also the CEO of Bionic, which is a very unique organization helping large customers innovate. And he's going to talk about certain ideas which, particularly in today's pandemic world, are even more relevant. And I don't want to steal any thunder out of him, but there's an amazing set of thoughts there that we can leverage immediately in our day-to-day world, as well as strategize for the future. So without any delay, handing it over to David Kidder.
My name is David Kidder. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bionic, a company that leads growth transformation in some of the largest companies in the world, and the co-author of New to Big, which is the idea that venture capital and entrepreneurship are the new forms of growth management. I just wanted to thank Haral and the team for inviting me today to share a few ideas about transformation, both growth and digital. It's clear we're going through a moment right now that is once in a generation, once in a century disruption. For many years in founding Bionic, I used to have to spend quite a bit of time making the case for disruption and change. And now all of that work has been done by a single global pandemic. I'm sure for all of us, reimagining our lives and reimagining our companies was not on our plan for 2020, but certainly is on every priority list this year and going forward. In a way, the organizations that we have led historically have been changed, altered, and possibly forever. It's like we had this bowl that we worked on refining and cementing and reinforcing for, in many cases, decades. That bowl was resilient, and we knew when the bowl cracked in the past, whether it be through a recession or a product or a culture challenge, we knew we could kind of micromanage our way and heal the brokenness. We had big things that would roll around it that we could understand inside one at a time. But in a way that bowl has been smashed, right? So many of the things that reinforced it no longer are fixable, or in many cases worth preserving. And so we have a moment where we need to pick the pieces up, the proprietary gifts of that broken bowl, and bring them into a new organization, a new membrane that can hold many things all at once, that's flexible, concussion-proof in a way that creates organizations that are resilient, which means the metrics for our resiliency are changing for all of us. You may be on the right side of this moment, or in some cases on the wrong side of it. Whether you're on the right side or wrong side, the new measurement that's coming from our stakeholders, our shareholders to us is no longer just the ideas of growth at a top line level measured in revenue, or many cases a zero-sum outcome with our competitive landscape, which is measured in share. But the measurement going forward is going to add two new metrics. One is, what percentage of the customer problems did we win in this post-transformation era? And lastly is, did we win the new models and the new permanence in those needs in the world going forward? Those metrics are really on our shoulders today as we go through this change. And so we have to back up and look at the organizations that make up this new cultures that we're trying to transform. And in a way, our big to bigger organizations, that old bowl, were designed for efficiency. They were designed for planning. They're designed for the shared use of the world that was zero-sum outcomes, right? And so if we can try to create growth out of those organizations, and they're only made and paid for efficiency, how can they grow? My work over the last 7-8 years has been to discover a new way to lead we call New to Big. So in the same way we have advanced administration degrees for good reason that manage that big to bigger, the future of management is through a growth mindset, in a way, the way venture capitalists invest, and entrepreneurship, which is designed for discovery. That New to Big, that $0 to $100 million journey of discovery is different than market capture. And so what exactly is in the way to lead an organization that's getting back to growth, that New to Big growth? I'd argue that it's largely in how you think. The idea of growth mindset is something that Bionic has been pioneer for enterprises since we started the company. Our purpose has been to ignite growth revolutions, and we've done it successfully in some of the largest organizations in the world, from Nike to Microsoft to Citigroup to P&G's transformation in the last 5 years has been built around this model. And I wanted to share today a couple of the core ideas of what is in this new way of thinking and working. First is the idea that we need to seek new commercial truth. The permission for truth in organization is a direct reflection of how we think and how we lead as CEOs. And so if we're showing up with answers every day, trying to control a dynamic change in and outside our companies, we're not going to get to new commercial truth. And so we need to ourselves, number one, break the addiction of being right. Learning leaders lead with questions. They ask the organization for the solutions to those new problems in the world, and they receive those new answers because they're not seeking to be right, they're seeking to learn. This is a very difficult behavioral switch, because what got us to the top, that big to bigger organization that preserved that old bowl, will not be what gets us to that new top, which means we have to embrace non-consensus type thinking so we can create new learning and undo old biases. Number two is our mindset shift needs to move from something we like to refer to as the TAM to the TAP, from a total addressable shared-based view of the world that focuses on zero-sum outcomes to the total addressable problem view of the world that's driven from the outside in. The problems in the world with our customers have changed, and if we don't shift from a share to a discovery mindset, from an inside out to an outside in view of the world, we're not going to discover those new problems. And more importantly, in our desire to seek certainty through a planning model, we're not going to launch enough. In a portfolio view of the world that captures that new total addressable problem or need, we're actually not going to launch 5 big bets that an expensive consulting firm tells us to launch, thinking hard. We're going to be in discovery mindset where we'll launch dozens of bets into the new problems or needs with a high degree of failure that teaches us why us and why now. And so number three, we need to move to the outside end. We need to discover that learning happens and changes happen from the outside, and we need to get there because that is where the learning is going to happen. That's where the new truth lives. And so the more that we desire to build from the inside out, to come with the answers, to build for customers, to solve it for them, the more we want to make our technology work. Those are our goals. Those are not anchored in customer problems. We must build with them. And when we show up with those customers, number 4 is we need to expire our data set. We need to set down old learnings and pick up new learnings and new evidence based in new commercial truths that we discover with those problems. We're not across the table with those customers and their needs. We're shoulder to shoulder with them, solving the problem in front of them, because we need to be in a high trust relationship that we're no longer taking from them. And God forbid you come from a legacy of taking more value than you give, to shifting from inside out, the end of R&D, to now a new way of discovering with them from the outside in, which means we need to come with new learnings, breaking the addiction right, expire our data sets. And number 5 is we need to validate new truths. We've all probably heard of the lean movement for experimentation. We call this validation, which is enterprise grade rigor around customer discovery. But the reason why we need to be experimenting and showing customers or leading with them is because they don't know. And the one thing that can lead you to the commercial truth is what they do, not what they say. So in the past, when they understood the needs and problems, we could use research and we could use surveying, we could use features to teach us. But in this case, we're experimenting in new features with them. And the one thing we can bet on is that behaviors don't lie. So often we invent something inside out, making it for a customer. We launch it, we use agile, we make it, we start spending real money. And we use outside, validation, so to speak, to come back and say, your idea is great. But when we launch it in the world, it fails miserably because the behavior didn't match the commercial truth of those outcomes. And so validation is a new skill that we need to have to discover that future. Number 5 is we have to embrace productive failure. which means in launching a large volume of bets into new behavior needs from the outside in, we're going to experiment with the intent to have inexpensive failure teach us where the behaviors of new customers are leading us. Whether it be for growth or digital transformation, when we can lower the cost of failure, we can reveal a new truth long before we turn on the engineering and start spending real money. We can get to it before we commit, and we can ask the question, should we do this? But we need to ask that question broadly, and in that product of failure, we can get to that new truth. Very often a CEO, after my keynotes, the leadership teams will come back and ask this discrete question or a statement where I don't think my team tells me the truth. And my answer to that CEO is they don't, and it's because of your leadership. And that's a provocation, it's a respectful one, but it's because the cost of failure is so high that people can no longer tell the truth. And one thing I've learned over making 40 angel investments over the last 15 years as an investor, but also as a 4-time founder, is that until you can lower the cost of failure, people can't tell you the truth. Until I can get into a relationship with them where they can speak it, I can't hear it, because you never invest in an entrepreneur or a team that loves their idea. You want them to obsess about the customer problem, have complete permission to solve it, whether it be with our technology or our proprietary gifts or not. And number 6 is we need to recognize that we're in a mode of learning a new form of leadership that we like to refer to as ambidextrous leadership. You've probably heard that ambiently, but it means that we need leaders who can operate and create. You no longer just sit on a P&L and nurture from past precedents. You must be in a position where you have discovery in the center of your mindset and the center of the team's skill. This is a vital moment for all of us and all of our leadership journeys. And I want to close with these last sort of inspiring ideas around some work I did when I wrote a book called The Startup Playbook. If you'd like to follow me, certainly with Harel and the team, I'm happy to send you New to Big, which is the model we use to transform some of these large organizations. But I want to draw from a book I wrote called The Startup Playbook about 10 years ago, where I interviewed about 40 entrepreneurs in the best of our time, about 300 hours. And this was Sarah Blakely and Robin Chase and Elon Musk and Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn fame, who wrote the foreword of the book. And I asked them, how do you bet your life on an idea? What's true about the idea to lead to an extraordinary outcome? And they all said basically these same selection criteria that I wanted to share with you today in closing. The number 1 criteria was proprietary gift. Why us? Why now? What is our unfair advantage? And so when you're returning to the future and you're building that new bowl and you need that North Star, the answer is in that question, proprietary gift. When you're chasing white space and features, trying to get customers to behave differently, inside out R&D focus, you can't really get to the truth, because if it's not true about you, it's not going to be true in the marketplace. Proprietary gifts are based in giftedness that's impossible to replicate. And my hope is that it inspires you to go find that again in yourself today. The second lens is extreme focus. Ironically, building companies, the more optionality you have, the weaker the organization. When you base it in giftedness and you have focus, extraordinary things can happen. The third is you got to build painkillers and not vitamins. You want to be seeking chronic, lifelong, malignant pain in customers so that you can actually solve it for long enough where you can win a whole marketplace. Vitamins are features. They're things that you wish, hope that a customer does, and it leads to wishful thinking. And that's the enemy, really, is that when we have painkillers, we know we're in a chronic need and we understand who the customer is. When we want our ideas to work, we're selling vitamins, and inevitably churns, and we're less successful. So the last 2 lenses of the 5 help you figure out what and how to invest and execute on. Those first 3 lenses basically eliminate almost 80% of all options and bets as an organization. But the last 2 are when you discover that proprietary gift with focus as a painkiller, now we want to focus on the element that can be 10 times better. That means that if we asymmetrically invested in that one thing, it would be impossible to replicate given enough time. We want to have 10Xs so we can get to the 5th lens, which is permanence. We want to be in the life of customers with intention for as long as possible, typically 3 years, but ideally forever. How can we create something with intention that creates value, that's so sticky and permanent that we get to build an extraordinary company with them? I'll come back in full circle and close with this final idea, which is there are no silver bullets here. Leading through change is difficult. leading through these moments of creating growth is in some cases a new task as we go after the new to big. And it requires incredible speed. Fast eats big in this moment. Whoever learns the fastest wins, and the only way to go faster is to do less work, is to work differently. And that's a primary question because the work we need to do is not going to be drawn from a skill that got us to where we are today, that big to bigger efficiency machine. It must come from a machine that is designed to discover and capture growth that lives in the new problems in the world. And so in the spirit of no silver bullets, my challenge is to you today is that the permission for your company to grow lives inside of you. It's in your spirit. When I wrote the purpose of Bionic 7 years ago, it was to ignite growth revolutions. And I often thought that that was just about the results, the money, or the impact of the startups. And it's actually not. It's a reflection of the interior life of the leader to raise permission, create openness, and seek truth that they themselves are seeking. And so I hope today is a provocation to you with some new lenses around growth mindset and the systems to go 2 or 3 levels down from the CEO so that the system begins to work and think differently and can discover and win the future that right now lives in the grand challenge of our time. Thank you for the opportunity today. You can always reach me at david@onbionic.com. I'm very grateful to be here. Love Harel and the team. And I hope you rethink and rediscover what transformation digitally or otherwise means to your organizations and leverage this great ecosystem and these fantastic tools that are available to you today. Thank you. And it's wonderful to see SuneraTech drive powerful ecosystems that are enabling digital innovation. It's wonderful to see SAP here and so many technology partners of theirs who are taking on the grand challenges of our time.
Thank you, David. That was amazing. As usual, provocative insights. And I particularly like the idea of proprietary gift and productive failures. We've all been through this journey where there's concern about failure and that really sort of hinders our ability to innovate. So just right on in terms of striking the right chords, and I'm sure the audience has got some great takeaways. I also like the analogy of painkillers versus vitamins, and particularly in today's new normal, that is even more relevant. So thanks again, amazing session. And